All right, strap in, everybody. Today, we're diving into the Great Pyramid of Giza. We all know it, right? The tomb of Pharaoh Khufu. At least that's what we've been told. But what if I told you there's a theory out there that flips that idea completely on its head?
You're talking about the idea that it wasn't a tomb at all.
Exactly. A theory that suggests the Great Pyramid was actually a massive, functioning chemical plant.
A chemical plant. Wow, that's a huge leap from mummies and treasures. So, where is this radical idea coming from?
Well, our deep dive today is based on this fascinating report titled Report on the Facility Design, Purpose and Destruction, and a couple of addendums that go along with it. They really dig deep into this whole chemical plant concept.
Interesting. So, what kind of chemicals are we talking about here?
Oh, just your everyday essential for a thriving civilization type of chemicals.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me the specifics. What were they supposedly cooking up in there?
Well, the report focuses on some pretty big hitters in the chemical world. We're talking ammonia, sulfuric acid, and possibly sodium carbonate and hydrochloric acid.
Those are some pretty potent substances. I can't imagine those were just lying around. What were they using them for?
That's what makes this theory so compelling. These chemicals were fundamental to so many aspects of ancient Egyptian life.
I can see that. Ammonia for agriculture, sulfuric acid for, well, a whole lot of things.
Exactly. Think fertilizer for their crops, ingredients for glassmaking and soap production. They even used these chemicals in mummification and metallurgy.
It's like the pyramid was this central hub for all their technological advancements. But how does a pyramid, a giant stone structure, become a chemical plant?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Instead of picturing chambers filled with gold and mummies, we're talking about a network of spaces designed for large-scale chemical production.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this, so walk me through it. How do the different parts of the pyramid fit into this whole chemical plant idea?
Let's start with the king's chamber, the big one that's always thought of as Khufu's burial chamber.
Right, the grand finale of the pyramid tour. So what does it become in this chemical plant scenario?
It becomes the heart of the operation, the main reactor for producing ammonia.
Hold on. Ammonia production in the king's chamber. How did they even manage that?
The theory is that they combined nitrogen from the air with hydrogen, possibly by splitting water molecules using some form of electrolysis.
Wow, that's impressive. So they were doing some serious chemistry in there. But what about those air shafts? Weren't those for ventilation?
That's what's traditionally been thought. But in this theory, those shafts take on a whole new role. They could have been used to introduce gases like hydrogen into the chambers or to vent out byproducts.
It makes you wonder if there were any remnants of this whole system left behind, any signs of pipes or containers or anything like that.
Well, that's where the evidence gets a little tricky. We'll delve more into that later. But for now, let's move down the pyramid. What about the lower levels? What role do they play in this chemical factory?
Well, you've got the queen's chamber down there, right? Always a bit of a mystery. What was its purpose?
According to the report, the Queen's chamber could have been the sulfuric acid production zone.
Sulfuric acid. That's some dangerous stuff. Why would they need that?
As dangerous as it is, sulfuric acid was incredibly valuable to the ancient Egyptians. They used it for refining metals, creating fertilizers, and even making certain pigments.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these chemicals were essential to their society, but this all sounds very elaborate. How did they even get the water they needed for all these reactions?
That's another fascinating piece of this puzzle. You see that subterranean passage?
You mean the one that descends deep below the pyramid? What about it?
The report suggests that this passage wasn't just symbolic, but a vital part of the whole chemical production process.
Okay, I'm all ears. How so?
Well, it was supposedly connected directly to an aquifer linked to the Nile River. This provided a constant water source for all their chemical reactions.
Wow, a direct water supply right into their chemical plant. It's like they designed this whole thing to be completely self-sufficient. But with a system this complex, something must have gone wrong at some point, right? I mean, it's not exactly in pristine condition today.
You're exactly right. That brings us to the next chapter in this story. The evidence that points to a massive catastrophe that might have crippled the entire facility.
A catastrophe, huh? I can already sense this is where things get really interesting.
Oh, it does. Because we're talking about signs of a huge explosion. Pulverized passages, cracked granite beams, and even chemical residues suggesting that things got a little out of control down there.
An explosion in the Great Pyramid. That's a pretty dramatic end to our chemical plant story. I'm hooked. Tell me more. It really makes you wonder what could have caused such a powerful event in a structure like this.
Right. I mean, the Great Pyramid is built to last. So what could have possibly generated enough force to cause that kind of damage?
Well, the report goes into a bunch of different possibilities, but one scenario really stands out.
I bet it's a juicy one. Lay it on me.
Imagine, if you will, a group of ancient tomb robbers. They've heard all the legends, all the whispers of unimaginable riches hidden deep within the pyramid.
Classic Tomb Raider story. Driven by greed, they're willing to risk it all for a chance at treasure.
Exactly. They sneak in, probably through some hidden passage, and start tunneling their way deeper and deeper into the pyramid.
So far, so good. They're on the hunt for gold, jewels, the usual spoils.
But instead of glittering treasures, they stumble right into the heart of this active chemical production zone.
Oh, that's bad. Really bad. I'm guessing those robbers were in for a nasty surprise.
You could say that. According to the report, the first thing that would have hit them was a wave of toxic gas.
Not exactly the welcoming committee they were expecting. What kind of gas are we talking about?
Most likely ammonia. Remember, we're talking about industrial scale production here.
Yeah.
So the concentration of ammonia would have been incredibly high.
I can only imagine. A face full of ammonia wouldn't have been a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
And probably pretty deadly, too, right?
Oh, absolutely. But the ammonia was just the beginning of their problems. The report suggests that things would have escalated pretty quickly from there.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What happened next?
Think about it. You have this massive release of ammonia into a confined space. And remember all that sulfuric acid we talked about?
Right, down in the Queen's chamber. Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yep. The ammonia would have reacted violently with any sulfuric acid that was still present, either in the chambers themselves or within the pipe systems.
So not just a toxic gas leak, but also a potential chemical explosion.
More like a series of explosions. The report describes it as sudden bursts of heat, rapid expansion of gases, basically a chemical chain reaction ripping through the pyramid.
Wow, that's intense. Talk about a tomb raiding trip gone wrong. But wait, how could a few chemical reactions cause so much damage to a structure as massive as the Great Pyramid?
It wasn't just the immediate explosions that were the problem, it was the corrosive nature of those chemicals.
Right. Both ammonia and sulfuric acid are pretty nasty stuff,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to stone, right?
Exactly. They would have eaten away at the limestone, which, as you know, makes up the bulk of the pyramid.
So it's like a 1-2 punch. First, the explosions, and then this gradual but relentless erosion of the pyramid structure.
Precisely. The report paints a pretty grim picture of what happened. It suggests that this chemical onslaught would have weakened the entire complex, essentially setting the stage for its eventual collapse.
This is getting more and more fascinating by the minute. And remember how we talked about the pyramid's connection to the Nile?
Right, the subterranean passage leading to the aquifer.
Well, if this whole chemical plant theory holds true, wouldn't that connection have made things even worse? I mean, wouldn't the water supply have been contaminated?
Absolutely. The report proposes that the contamination of the aquifer would have been devastating. Imagine the very lifeblood of this facility, the water source for all those reactions, suddenly becoming a toxic cocktail.
It's like a domino effect. One wrong move and the whole system comes crashing down. But if this is all true, there should be some evidence left behind, right?
You'd think so. And luckily there is.
Really? That's awesome. What have researchers found?
Well, there have been some intriguing discoveries within the pyramid. For example, researchers have found traces of sulfuric acid and salt incrustations.
So it's like the chemicals left behind their calling cards.
Exactly. It's like they're whispering secrets from the past, hints about what might have happened within those chambers thousands of years ago.
It's like a real-life CSI episode, but with ancient Egyptian chemicals.
Yeah.
But even with all this evidence, I'm still a little stuck on this idea. I mean, if the Egyptians were so advanced with their chemistry, why didn't they build in some safeguards?
That's a fair point. But remember, we're looking at this through the lens of modern knowledge. We've had centuries to learn from our mistakes.
So you're saying the ancient Egyptians, despite their ingenuity, might have been a little naive about the potential dangers.
It's possible. They were pioneers in many ways. Maybe they were so focused on the benefits of what they were creating that they didn't fully grasp the magnitude of what could happen if things went wrong.
That makes sense. It's like they were pushing the boundaries of their knowledge, but perhaps without fully understanding the risks involved.
Exactly. And, we're talking about a civilization that existed thousands of years ago. The fact that they were even able to harness these chemicals at all is a testament to their brilliance. But like you said, maybe they just didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle yet.
So we've got a possible cause for this disaster. We've talked about the terrifying chain reaction that could have unfolded, and we've even got some physical evidence to back it up. But earlier, you mentioned the Jedi Project. How does that fit into all of this?
Ah, yes, the Jedi Project. Now, that was a truly fascinating endeavor.
Refresh my memory. What exactly was the Jedi Project?
It was a robotic exploration mission sent deep into the pyramid to explore the air shafts and chambers that were inaccessible to humans.
So they sent robots where humans couldn't go. And what did these robotic explorers find? Did they bring back anything that supports this whole chemical plant theory?
You bet they did. One of the most exciting discoveries was in the Queen's chamber shaft. The Jedi robot found these copper pins, and it seems like they were part of a movable sealing mechanism.
So they weren't just random pieces of metal.
Nope. They suggest a level of control over the environment within the pyramid that aligns perfectly with the idea of controlled chemical processes. Think about it. They could regulate airflow and pressure with those pins.
That's amazing. So it's possible that they were using these mechanisms to manage the flow of gases and reactions within the pyramid.
That's the theory.
So
And
get
it's not
this.
just the copper pins. The Jedi Project also found red ochre markings inside the shafts.
Red ochre markings, what were those all about?
Well, they could be simple construction markings, but some researchers think they were more than that.
Intriguing. What else could they be?
Some believe they were symbolic representations, almost like instructions for operating the chemical plant or maybe even for maintenance.
It's like they left us a message in a language we don't quite understand yet. Why haven't we figured out what those markings mean?
Deciphering ancient symbols is a really tough job. It's not like translating a modern language. We're trying to understand a completely different way of thinking, a different way of communicating. It takes time and a lot of dedication to crack that code.
I can only imagine. But even without a complete understanding of the markings, the Jedi Project seems to provide more evidence for the chemical plant theory.
It definitely adds another layer of intrigue to the whole story, but I have to admit, it's still a big leap to go from tomb to chemical plant. Is there anything, any piece of evidence that could definitively prove this theory?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We have, from tombs and pharaohs to chemical explosions and robotic explorers. It's been quite a ride.
It's amazing to think that one theory can completely change how we see something as iconic as the Great Pyramid.
It really makes you question everything you thought you knew.
We started with this idea that the pyramid might not have been a tomb at all, but rather a huge, complex chemical plant.
A chemical plant that was crucial to ancient Egyptian civilization, producing all sorts of essential substances.
And then, of course, there's the evidence of this catastrophic event that could have brought the whole operation to a screeching halt.
Yeah, the signs of an explosion, the chemical residues, it definitely paints a dramatic picture.
And we can't forget about the Jedi Project and all the fascinating discoveries it made.
Right, the copper pins, the red ochre markings, all those little hints that seem to support this whole chemical plant idea.
But as we dug deeper, we realized that each answer seemed to generate even more questions.
That's the thing about history. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces. You find one piece, and it just reveals a whole new section of the puzzle that you didn't even know existed.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I have to admit, I'm left with this lingering feeling of awe and wonder.
Me too. The Great Pyramid, no matter what its original purpose might have been, it's a testament to the ingenuity and the ambition of the people who built it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even though we might never know for sure what went on inside those chambers, the exploration, the debate, the constant search for answers, that's what makes it so fascinating.
Exactly. We might never have definitive proof, but the pursuit of knowledge, that's what drives us forward.
So, for all of you listening out there, I encourage you to keep questioning, keep exploring, keep digging deeper into the mysteries of the past.
Because who knows what incredible discoveries are still waiting to be unearthed.
That's it for this deep dive, folks.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those imaginations open.
Because the past is full of surprises, just waiting for us to uncover them.